أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن أعرض عن ذكري فإن له معيشة ضنكا صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I'm aware that it's the final nights of Shahr Ramadan, and I understand that many are tired. We have a smaller gathering today. So with all of that in mind, I won't overdo the time that I've been allotted. The subject of analysis in each of these nights has been refuting postmodernism, a return to traditional values. Within this series, we examined many of the ideas which are pushed within the modern world and how they differ from the traditional viewpoint that the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam have given. One of the things that we see within the world today is that we see that there is a loss of reflection and pondering. And what I mean by this is that even when you look at what ilm and knowledge is, you find that knowledge has shifted in a direction where it is the accumulation of facts. Or a person who is seen as knowledgeable is a person who has read widely, or he has obtained a different source of knowledge from a number of different places. But whereas in the traditional world, it was not necessary for an individual to read widely or to go to a lot of different sources, but rather an individual who is able to reflect upon the knowledge he has is able to deepen that reality. That's why when you look in the Quran, you find that there are many narrations which emphasize that when you recite the book of Allah, the goal is not just to finish the recitation. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen would say that for a believer, recite 50 verses of the Quran every day. That at a minimum, recite 50 verses of the book of Allah. That minimum he gave, it wasn't 200 verses or 5 chapters or 1 juz of the Quran, but that minimum was something which was manageable. And the reason that it is manageable is because when you look at the Quran itself, the key thing which it is inciting mankind is to ponder over it. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالُهَا? That do they not ponder over the book of Allah, or is there a lock upon their hearts? In other words, it doesn't give a third option. It gives 2 options. The first option is either you are somebody who ponders over the book of Allah, or at the second level, there is a lock upon that heart which will not allow you to attain that state that you will attain if you ponder over the Quran. So you find in this manner, pondering reflection is something which is necessary. And that's why when we look at the world today, oftentimes in the busyness of life, or in something which is called the amount of sensation that we feel everywhere, that either you're listening to something or watching something on a constant basis, you find that thought itself is lost in that capacity. And that's why when we look within the Islamic tradition, we find that knowledge is of different sources, amongst which reflection has been given a key position. There's a verse of the Quran in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verse 64. It says, وَاللَّهُ أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا that Allah brought you forth from the wombs of your mother when you didn't know anything. وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And He made for you vision, hearing, and the hearts in order that you can thank Him. You know, over here, the interesting thing which is mentioned is that why does Allah, in this verse which is speaking about knowledge and the ways to acquire knowledge, mention the heart? He says that He has brought you forth from the wombs of your mother when you don't know anything. And He made for you sight, He made for you hearing, He made for you these hearts in order that you can recognize Him, in order that you can thank Him. You see, the heart within the Quran is seen as that throne where the aql is. The heart is seen as that place where reflection occurs. And that individual who is able to reflect is able to deepen and verify his knowledge. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen, very famously, he has a will to Imam al-Hasan, which is found in Nahjul Balagha. And within that will, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, Ya Bunayya, that, O my son, even though I did not live with the people in the past, I reflected about their incidents so much, it is as if I was with them in their cities. And it is as if I was with them in their marketplaces. Amir al-Mu'mineen is going to show that through reflection and understanding of these past societies, which is a form of pondering, it is as if he was living with them. It is as if he understood their circumstances. And when he understood their circumstances, he brought that example into his time period to learn from the mistakes of the past people. You know, Rasulullah, time and time again, he would incite mankind that when it comes to the Quran, when it comes to history, reflect on this reality. Because these events which occurred, you find that they will occur again. Because human nature, it doesn't change. And as long as human nature is the same, those mistakes which the past people made, it is possible that you'll fall into those mistakes as well. That's why Rasulullah would say that whatever occurred amongst Banu Israel will occur within my ummah. To the extent that if any of them falls into the den of a lizard, somebody from my ummah will fall into the den of a lizard. That famous hadith, when Rasulullah mentions this, he says basically that go and reflect in the Quran on the incident of Banu Israel. See the mistakes that they made, that despite having a Nabi of Allah in front of them, you find that they make their own Lord. They begin to worship that. Or they get bewildered by an individual who has a great amount of wealth, or somebody who has a great amount of knowledge, but you find that practice isn't there with that knowledge. All of these examples are there within Banu Israel, they're there within the Ummah of Rasulullah. You know, amongst the children of Banu Israel, a famous individual amongst them was Ba'alam ibn Bahura. And this individual, Ba'alam, the riwayat, they state that he had a portion of God's knowledge. That a portion of the Isma Adam, he had one portion of that. But when he had that one portion, you find that it became a test for him. And that test, it led him to oppose Musa. Individuals, they were fascinated that this individual has knowledge, but you find that submission to Allah's Prophet alongside that ilm, it wasn't there. You find this is one example. In the time period of Rasulullah, how many individuals there are who have ilm, who have knowledge, but they did not submit to the command of Rasulullah. They did not submit to the message of Ghadir, to the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. You find this in reality is there. Another example from Banu Israel of an individual is Qarun. You know, Qarun was an individual, it stated that he had an immense amount of wealth. And the Quran states that when Banu Israel, they would see the wealth of Qarun, they would desire that we wish that we had his lifestyle. But Allah, He brings an adab upon Qarun, that Qarun is swallowed in towards the earth. And the Quran, it says that when Banu Israel saw what happened to him, وَالَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ, those individuals who desired his position yesterday, they began to thank Allah that, oh Allah, you did not give us in the manner that you gave towards this individual. So you find this incident, it occurs in the history of Banu Israel. But when Allah mentions this in the Quran, or it's mentioned within the Hadith, the sole goal of that is not just to go and look at history in a dry manner, but rather it is to look at Islamic history, it is to look at the world today and see how that reality it applies within the world today. You know, in the Ummah of Rasulullah, there were many individuals with a great amount of wealth as well. But in reality, that wealth became a source of adab for the one who received it, for the one who had it. You know, it's very famous that the third caliph, you know, it's very difficult historically to defend the amount of wealth that he would give to those family members that Rasulullah himself had outlawed. You know, the family of As, the family of Hakam. You find these families were outlawed by Rasulullah, but in that time period you find because that relationship was there, they are brought back into power, they are brought back into that reality. So you find all of these different examples of reflection, of pondering are there for mankind to better themselves. They're there for mankind to reflect upon those realities. You know, I'll never forget, there's a very famous incident of a famous scholar in Najaf, of Shaheed Baqir al-Sadaq. And they asked him that, oh individual, how did you attain the scholarly status that you attained? He replied by saying, I attained the status by 10% of my time reading and writing and 90% of my time spending it in reflection. In other words, we think that for a person to be knowledgeable in today's world, that 90% is spent in reading, in working, in doing academic activities. But in reality, those who have been successful are individuals who reflected upon these different realities. As I said, I wouldn't take a large amount of time today. It's a smaller gathering. We can, however, within these last 2 to 3 nights, after the lecture, open the floor up for question and answer if the community is open for it. And those who are on the sister side, perhaps we can arrange for their questions to be sent in some capacity as well. We'll end with the dua. If anyone has any questions, we'll keep the floor open. If not, we'll conclude tonight's program. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Murtaza, do you want to see if there's any questions on the women's side? We can, like I said, these last couple nights, I expect the gatherings to be smaller. We had a series of 10 lectures. We'll open the floor up and make it a little bit more interactive, because I do see that everyone is tired as well as we approach the last few days. Yeah, in the meantime, we'll do one Surah Al-Fatiha while everyone is gathering their questions, and then we'll start with you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
About me.
Allahumma salli ala.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to ask you the questions, and thank you very much for last almost pretty much the whole week you were here and giving us the very knowledgeable lectures, even though the time was very short, but the knowledge you give us is more than enough. And I agree with this thing that next time maybe we should do the same thing. In 20 minutes we should wrap up everything and give a quality and educational time to all the audience. Thanks again. But now question is that what is I mean, you know, I remember when I was in Pakistan that we used to wait as soon we heard the azan, we start having the fast.
Yes.
But over here, we have a lot of different saying that, okay, no, you gotta finish it before 10 minutes. I understand that part, but can we wait till the azan or not?
So the idea that you're referring to is what is called imsak. Imsak does not have a value in the Sharia. In terms of Sharia, if you're speaking from the aspect of riwayat, Ahlul Bayt, they gave permission that a person is allowed to eat until the adhan of Salatul Fajr, until the time of Salatul Fajr. The reason imsak is there is as a precaution that if somebody is not 100% sure what the time of Salatul Fajr is, just to be cautious, there is a 4, 5, 10 minute barrier that is left. But if you are confident, if you have itmi'nan and contentment, that for example, if your local masjid has a website that says 6 a.m. is Salatul Fajr, and you are confident in their timing, then you're okay to go until Salatul Fajr. Because in Sharia, that is what the hukum is, that a person is allowed to eat until the daytime begins with Salatul Fajr. I think we have one question right here on this side, if I'm not mistaken.
Darko, did you have a question? No, I don't think so.
No.
I have a question.
Please.
Can you just go over the travel, restrictions when you're fasting and what those rules are?
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios in this situation. So, if you are an individual who is in your hometown, then in that case, you are able to travel obviously within your hometown. That's scenario one. Like for example, if somebody goes outside of the city limits for their work on a daily basis, and they're returning back towards their hometown, in that case, they maintain their fast normally. Because number one, it is their hometown, and it's something which is a part of their routine. However, if it's not something which is a part of your daily routine, to go outside of the city limits, the 28 miles, one way, 56 total, or your job requires it, but they only require it occasionally. For example, once every couple months, or something which is not in a set schedule, then in that situation, an individual is not allowed to fast. So it really depends what the circumstances of the particular individual is. There's no hard and set rule for every single person in that regard. So I think you'll have to expand if there's a particular scenario you had in mind. I can go, in more depth into that.
Sure. Well, I think the perfect example is like me traveling to the farm. It's on a daily basis, but not always. Sometimes.
Yeah, no. For you,
so
the situation is you're going to the farm in Liberty, right? Yes. It's outside of the city limits.
Yes.
But it's something which is a part and parcel of your work. Normally, it's not that you're doing it every single day. That is not the barometer. The barometer is this: is that if it is generally considered a part of your job to travel, then in that case an individual will fast as normal. So in your case, because this is work and this is considered a general thing, even though you're not going every single day, you maintain your fast in these situations.
No. Is there any, I'm sorry. No, please. Is there any percentage
I remember I used to travel a lot.
Yes.
Is there any percentage, like in a month, if you travel more than 30% or?
It's not percentage. It's all of these things in Islamic law is based on what is called urf. And urf means the general convention. So if by the general convention, that when a person thinks of that job, it is associated with traveling regularly, then in that situation, a person will continue to fast. For example, if somebody is a traveling nurse, just by when you think of that job, the first thing which comes to mind is somebody who travels regularly to different areas and whatnot. That is the barometer. Now, to attain that barometer percentage-wise, whatnot, the main thing is that it is a part of your consistent routine. So it should be something in a set schedule. So it can't be you have a business trip this quarter, next quarter, perhaps you'll have one business trip, but no, it has to be something which is frequent enough.
Okay, so even though if you know about it or if you don't know about it, like I mean, you know, if you have a schedule, you don't know.
No, you should know about it. Because if you don't know about it, then it's not considered a regular part of your life. If it's a regular part of your life, you will obviously know about it.
How much is the fitra this year?
I'm not sure, but I will announce that, inshallah. Well, I'll announce that tomorrow or Sunday.
Yeah.
I think we have a question from the
If it
ladies.
is Eid of Sunday, then.
It'll be 99% it'll be on Monday. Unfortunately or fortunately. It's very difficult to see the moon on Saturday night, but you know, Allahu A'lam. But
$10.
huh?
$10 for Houston for the.
$10 for Houston? Okay, so this brother is taking the responsibility and saying that it's $10 in Houston.
Yeah, I heard in today's football, it's $10.
Yeah. Responsibility is on
You can go ahead with
them.
the question whenever you're ready.
Please.
You spoke about reflection today, so I
Yes.
just wanted to ask if you have any questions we can ask ourselves or tips for meaningful reflection. Sometimes I find it hard to stay focused and not let my mind wander when it comes to reflecting.
Yeah, I mean, so in the context of the Quran uses two words. It uses the word tadabbur and it uses the word tafakkur. The word tadabbur in the Arabic language, at its root, the word is something which refers to the backside. So what tadabbur and pondering is referring to is that it's referring to the end result or the practical application. So I think that's one aspect that a person knows that what exactly is the purpose behind what they're reading and how they can apply what they're reading. So that's one facet of the discussion. But the second aspect of the discussion is that the other word which is used in the Quran is the word tafakkur. And this form, tafakkur, means to constantly return back to that which you were reflecting upon. So, in that regard, you know, the best way for one to deepen their understanding of something is to repeat it. You know, in the Arabic language, the word which is used for study is the word dars, darasa. In Urdu, you use the word dars as well. One of the meanings of the word dars is to put an item of clothing so many times that that item of clothing, it becomes worn out. So you find this is the root meaning of that word within the Arabic language. And in that regard, you know, if you repeat and go over things, even if you've heard them 1,000 times, the more you reflect on these different aspects, the more you'll gain. And you'll gain different perspectives that you didn't have the previous times.
I think we have one more question from the ladies.
Yeah.
What if you don't do a hijab in school and it's wajib?
Yeah, I mean, you should try your best to do all of your wajibat. I mean, it is something which is mandatory. But you should always be proud of who you are. And that's the key point. You should be proud of your background. You should be proud of the role models that you have in your life. And if you're really proud of who you are, you're confident in who you are, then it doesn't matter if you're in school or in Sunday school or work, any place that you may be, you'll uphold your values. And I think that's the best way to look at it, is that a person understands their identity, they understand their background, they understand all of the good values within our religion, within our tradition. And you know, if you really appreciate that, you'll want to show others. You know, if a person has a nice car, or if a person has a nice house, naturally they want to show other people things that they like. You know, they want everyone to hear it. And in that regard, you know, our morals, our principles, hijab, all of these other things, if we truly value them, then we'll want to show this character to other individuals as well. So I think, you know, even though the person who asked this is younger, you know, their parents can explain the point that I'm making farther, is that understand the value. That's the key thing. If you understand the value of it, all the other problems will go away and challenges.
Thank you.
Mine.
One last question for you, brother. I think this is a good reminder for everybody.
Yes.
What are the rules for making up rosas that you missed?
Yeah, in the circumstance that a person intentionally misses a fast, meaning they are able to fast, they do not have a legitimate excuse, then that individual has to do the kafara, the atonement for it. If you intentionally, meaning you have no legitimate excuse, you miss the fast, in that case, you know, either you fast 60 days or you feed 60 poor people, you know, a particular amount of food. So that's that circumstance. But if in the circumstance that you have a legitimate excuse, you know, you are legitimately ill or whatnot, within 1 year, an individual should make up that fast, and that individual has the freedom to choose when he makes up that fast. So that's the key aspect of the discussion.
So what about for medical issues if you're not able to?
Yeah, that's an excuse. That's a legitimate excuse. So if somebody, for example, you know, has a medical condition where they will never be able to fast, for example, you know, severe diabetes or whatnot, they end up paying the fidya for, you know, the amount of fast, a certain amount they give at the end of the month. But if it's a medical reason which is temporary, you know, you're extremely ill during Shahr Ramadan, then you make it up after the month. I think with that we'll conclude. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Ya Allah, taqabbal ibadatana warzuqna ziyarat qabr al-Husayn wa shafa'at ahli al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان، السلام عليك يا شريف القرآن، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.